Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In November, I informed the House that the Government would make a new decision in response to the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman's report into the way changes to the state pension age were communicated to women born in the 1950s. This followed relevant evidence coming to light as part of legal proceedings challenging the original decision announced by my predecessor in December 2024. We have now concluded the process to make a new decision and are placing copies of the Government's full response in the libraries of both Houses. Before I turn to the substance, I think it's important to be clear what this decision and statement is about and what it is not. There are legitimate and sincerely held views about whether it was wise to increase the state pension age. In particular, whether the decision taken in 2011 by the coalition government to accelerate equalisation and the rise to the age of 66 was the right thing to do or not. But the issue that we are discussing today is not about the merits or otherwise of past policy decisions on the state pension age. What the Ombudsman investigated was how changes to the state pension age were communicated and whether within a specific and narrow time period there was maladministration and injustice, and if so, whether it warrants compensation. In March 2024, the Ombudsman published their final report into this. And as with so many other issues, the previous government left the report on their desks, issued no response, took no decision and left it to this government to respond. In December 2024, the then Work and Pensions Secretary, my right honourable friend, the member for Leicester West, set out the government's response, having considered all the information provided to her. However, given relevant research from 2007 about the effectiveness of sending letters subsequently emerged that had not been provided to my right honourable friend, I wanted to ensure the right and proper process was followed to take account of this alongside information previously considered. And of course, I asked the Department not just to consider the 2007 report, but also to undertake new searches as part of an extensive review of relevant historical documents to help inform this new decision. Madam Deputy Speaker, we accept that individual letters about changes to the state pension age could have been sent earlier. For this, I want to repeat the apology that my right honourable friend gave on behalf of the Government, and I am sorry that those letters were not sent sooner. We also agree with the Ombudsman that women did not suffer any direct financial loss from the delay. However, the question is about the impact of the delay in sending these letters. The evidence taken as a whole, including from 2007, suggests the majority of 1950s-born women would not have read and recalled the contents of an unsolicited pensions letter, even if it had been sent earlier. Furthermore, the evidence also suggests that those less knowledgeable about pensions, the very women who most needed to engage with a letter and where it might have made a difference, were the least likely to read it. So an earlier letter would have been unlikely to make a difference to what the majority of women knew about their own state pension age. Indeed, the 2007 report concluded automatic pension forecast letters only had a negligible impact on pension knowledge and planning, and the Department stopped sending them. The evidence shows that the vast majority of 1950s-born women already knew the state pension age was increasing, thanks to a wide range of public information, including through leaflets, education campaigns, information in GP surgeries, on TV, radio, cinema and online. To specifically compensate only those women who suffered injustice would require a scheme that could reliably verify the individual circumstances of millions of women. That includes whether someone genuinely didn't know their state pension age was changing and whether they would have read and remembered a letter from many years ago and acted differently. It would not be practical to set up a compensation scheme to assess conclusively the answers to these questions. As for a flat rate scheme, That would cost up to £10.3 billion and would simply not be right or fair, given it would be paid to the vast majority who were aware of the changes. I've heard calls for compensation aimed at lower income pensioners, and we have focused in the last 12 months on raising pension credit uptake. But in the context of this decision, a scheme focused on any single income group still doesn't specify who may or may not have suffered injustice. And that is why, Madam Deputy Speaker, in taking this new decision, the Government has come to the same conclusion on compensation as my right honourable friend, the previous Secretary of State, announced in December 2024. I know that many people feel the state pension age should not have gone up in the way that it did. Indeed, Labour argued against the 2011 policy decision put in place by the Conservative Lib Dem coalition that accelerated the increase. But I repeat what I said at the start of my statement. This is a different issue to the one the Ombudsman investigated and that we are responding to today, which relates to the communication of changes in the state pension age and narrowly to a delay in sending letters over a relatively short period. The changes from 2011 underline the importance that decisions on the state pension age carry and the impact they have on people's lives. I take seriously the need to weigh carefully any future changes. That is why, with the Ombudsman, the Department has been developing an action plan for the future. Work on that stopped pending today's new decision, and I can confirm that it will now resume. This also underlines why we are determined to ensure that all pensioners on lower incomes, the majority of whom are women, have a better life in retirement, just as Labour has done in the past. From the Wilson government, that first formally linked the uprating of pensions to the higher of earnings or prices, to the last Labour government that lifted 1 million pensioners out of poverty. We introduced pension credit, which is vital in topping up the incomes of the poorest pensioners, with women consistently making up the majority of those benefiting since we introduced it in 2003. And we are ensuring that more pensioners get that extra income, with the biggest ever campaign to increase take-up. This saw tens of thousands of more awards to the pension credit in the year up to November compared to the previous year. In addition, our commitment to the triple lock for this Parliament means that women will see their state pension rise by up to £575 this year, with incomes up to £2,100 a year higher by the end of the Parliament. Indeed, overall spending on the state pension is set to be over £30 billion a year higher by the end of this Parliament compared to 2024-25. And we're putting record investment into the NHS, meaning thousands more pensioners are getting the operations and treatment that they need rather than being left in pain on waiting lists. That is the positive difference that this government is making. Madam Deputy Speaker, I believe it was right to review the evidence, and that having done so, we've made the right decision based on due process and the body of evidence. And at the same time, looking to the future, we are taking important steps to support women in retirement and help them to build a better life for themselves and their families, and I commend this statement to the House.
I call the Shadow Minister, Mark Garnier.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Secretary of State for advance sight of his statement. So as constituency MPs, Madam Deputy Speaker, we will all have met many people, many campaigners from the Women Against State Pension Inequality campaign group, the WASPI Women. I'm sure that many members of this House will have received a large amount of correspondence on this recently, and if they're anything like me, where I've had 150 emails recently about this, they will really feel the strength of opinion there is out there on this thing. But it is safe to say that both our constituents and as members of Parliament, we have been left wanting by this government. In December 2024, the previous Secretary of State, the Right Honourable Member for Leicester West, told this House that the government would not compensate these women. Let me remind colleagues what her rationale was, and I quote, "The government do not believe that paying a flat rate to all women at a cost of up to £10.5 billion would be a fair or proportionate use of taxpayers' money." She tried to also argue that they couldn't afford it because of holes in the government finances. But as my right honourable friend, the Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, rightfully said, the government compensation should always be based on what is fair and just. So before getting into government, it seemed that Labour MPs did think that an injustice had been done. And let us remind our colleagues of what members of this government have said in the past. The Prime Minister himself called this situation a huge injustice. The Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary slammed the cliff edge, he said, that faced WASPI women. The Foreign Secretary said she was fighting for a fair deal for the WASPI women. The Chancellor of the Exchequer claimed to want justice for WASPI women. Even the current Secretary of State, Madam Deputy Speaker, got in on the action, where he put out a social media post with the caption, "Members of Parliament campaigning for a better deal for WASPI women." Is it no wonder, therefore, that the WASPI women who were promised so much are so angry? The people who used to stand beside them have now turned against them. If the government really believed that these women had faced a great injustice, they would have found a way to compensate them. They could have avoided a deal with Mauritius that will cost us all £35 billion. But they chose not to. They could have found savings on our country's benefit bill, but they chose not to. They had 14 years to prepare for government and are messing up by doing nothing. And that brings us to the statement from the Secretary of State today. Isn't it convenient, Madam Deputy Speaker, that he should choose a sitting day when most MPs are not here? It's almost as if they don't want to hear the criticism from his own backbenchers. In reality, all the Secretary of State is doing is announcing that nothing has changed and that they won't be compensating WASPI women. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I have a few questions. Given he previously campaigned for a better deal for WASPI women, does he think that today's announcement provides that better deal? Secondly, in his statement, the Secretary of State tries to argue that this is somehow our fault on this side of the chamber. However, he forgets that the maladministration, which the previous Secretary of State apologised for, was committed under the last Labour government before 2010. This is something that the Ombudsman report made explicitly clear. So can the Secretary of State just hold his hands up and take accountability for these mistakes? Thirdly, and this is a really interesting point, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Secretary of State chose to mention the triple lock in his statement, and he chose to say that the state pension would go up by up to £575 this year, with an expected income rises by up to £2,100 a year by the end of this Parliament. Now, we all know there's no cap on the triple lock. There's no cap on the triple lock. But he makes a point where he says it will go by up to 2,100. So is he implying that the triple lock is about to be capped? Can he confirm that he's apparently U-turning on their policy on the triple lock by imposing a cap? And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, isn't it now just fact that this government resemble, frankly, a bunch of joyriders pulling handbrake turns in a Tesco car park when they should be a serious party of government? Their backbenchers keep being marched up the hill only to be told to march down again. They even take the whip away from them for having a conscience, only to be told later that ministers are proud to support policies that were only recently sackable offences. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, does he really think this constant back and forth is fair on WASPI women? I look forward to his comments.
The honourable gentleman's response. He's right that there has been a forceful and an energetic campaign which has resulted in lots of emails and contact with members right across the House. But his government had this report from the Ombudsman. They could have taken a decision before the election. They chose not to, as with so many other issues. And perhaps the Ombudsman had an inkling of how unlikely it would be to get a decision from the government, because the Ombudsman of the time made the recommendations on remedy to Parliament rather than to his government. Now he refers to Labour, to me, to other MPs on this side of the House. I remind him, we did vote against the acceleration in the rise to the state pension age that was put through by the coalition government. In terms of the re-examination of the decision, I thought it was right to do. to make absolutely sure that we got this right, considering not just the 2007 report, but a whole range of evidence and documents. I have repeated the apology given by my predecessor for the maladministration that the Ombudsman found. And as for his comments on the triple lock, there is no change in our position, and the figures quoted reflect the estimates of the OBR throughout the Parliament.
I'll now call Barry Gardner, followed by Steve Darling. Barry Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm sure my right honourable friend will appreciate the enormous disappointment on this side of the House. Only 2 years before the general election, our now Prime Minister spoke in favour of a just settlement for WASPI women. I acknowledge what he said, that this was not contained in our manifesto. We did not make that promise in the manifesto, and it's a manifesto that we all stood on. But he will recognise that there is a real sense of injustice that has been done to those women, and today has not remediated that.
Secretary of State.
I'm grateful for my honourable friend's question, and I understand what he says, but it's important to also consider exactly what is at issue here in the statement. There are many people who are unhappy with the rise in the state pension age and the decision to equalise it. And this decision does not deal with that. It deals with a specific issue of how this was communicated over a specific period of time. And it's really important in this to separate these two things. I believe on that grounds we have considered this very carefully, not just once, but twice now, and given this due and proper process. It is right to apologise for the maladministration, but I believe that the decision that we've taken on remedy and compensation is also the correct one.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Steve Darling.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I must say I met a few weeks ago with the Secretary of State where we reflected on him being a fan of Celtic and Bruce Springsteen, but I wasn't aware that he was also a member of the Magic Circle, because clearly he's trying to set up a number of illusions around us of issues that this is to do with and comments, when actually it is all about whether these women were communicated adequately. And I would reflect on what my right honourable colleagues was stating just now. It's about injustice. And when you get elected as an MP and you're somewhat disappointed as a Liberal Democrat not to be a member of the government, that actually it is about seeking out injustice and tackling this. And yet the Secretary of State is putting this in the too hard to do file. There are more than 3.6 million WASPI women across the UK who will feel this as if it were a punch in the stomach. They will feel utterly betrayed, and they will feel betrayed because false hope was given to them in the autumn, and so that hope has been dashed. I'd like to thank the more than 100 MPs from across the United Kingdom who supported the letter I coordinated calling for justice for WASPI women, but sadly this fell on stony ground. So I'd like to ask the Secretary of State, what engagement did he have with the Ombudsman before coming to his final conclusions around this? And also, can he please explain further why he has chosen to ignore the recommendation of the Ombudsman to give justice to WASPI women and pay compensation?
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. He's certainly right about Celtic and Bruce Springsteen and my allegiance to both. But there is no illusion about the position of his party. He says, with a tinge of regret, that he wishes they were in government. But they were in government, and that's the point. And in 2011, they took the decision to accelerate the equalisation and the raising of the state pension age. So they were in government and were in the position of being able to take these decisions. The heart of this is something different. It is about how these decisions were communicated and whether people really could have done something differently. Now, he asks about engagement with the Ombudsman. I, of course, have looked at their report. The current Ombudsman recently met the Permanent Secretary, and in terms of future work, as I said in my statement, we will pick up the work that was paused on the action plan so that in future, when we're considering the state pension age, we not only consider policy, but fully consider all the aspects of communication and the period of warning, things that were distinctly not done when that decision to accelerate the state pension age happened under his government in the coalition.
Dame Chiel Mora.